Breaking news from East Minneapolis last night. 2 dead found dead. This event is truly tragic, yet very mysterious. Authorities are working hard to figure out how these deaths occurred. What's even more mysterious, however, was the strange stature the deceased bodies were found in. They were both lying in a stiff position on the ground right outside of their home. It's almost as if they were stunned by something. Many think that when you die, your body becomes limp, but it's actually the exact opposite. I know, crazy. As authorities look into the case, let's take a look at the phenomenon, properly known as rigor mortis, that occurs right after you die.
In order to discuss the stiffening of muscles after death, we need to first look at the muscle contraction on a cellular level. The first process of the muscular contraction is the neuromuscular junction. This is how the neuron signals to the muscle in the first place. The action potential is rippling down the axon of the motor neuron. Action potential is the temporary change in charge of the cells along the axon of the neuron caused by a switch in the potassium-sodium gradient. The action potential signals for the neurotransmitters in blue to be released from the vesicles in red across the synapse, which is located between the axon terminal and the sensory. The neurotransmitters cross the synapse and attach to the receptors on the other neuron. This signal then triggers the action potential to continue down the new neuron or the target neuron.
The second process is known as the sarcomere. This starts by introducing the action potential from the neuromuscular junction and sending it down the T tubules, which are protrusions that help send signals and receive them better. The sarcoplasmic reticulum is a sac of calcium ions that are brought in by the calcium pump, in orange, in the form of active transport. The calcium is stored in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. The action potential coming down the T tubules is then stopped at the action potential controlled calcium pump. Once the calcium pump is stimulated by the action potential, it releases calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. The calcium then travels down to the actin. The actin is a larger line with myosin binding sites on each. The binding sites are covered by tryptomyosin. The calcium binds to the receptor on the actin called troponin, which then moves the tryptomyosin so that the binding sites are apparent. Once the binding sites are visible, the myosin heads on the myosin then connect to them and use them to pull the two sides of the myosin closer to each other. Millions of muscle cells doing this exact motion is how the muscle contracts.
Sarcomeres are arranged in a stacked pattern through muscle fibers. This is the reason we see striations when looking at muscle cells under a microscope. They are repeated thousands of times, stacked on top of each other to create our muscles. The interaction between actin and myosin are the core components of how the sarcomere shortens. When the actin and myosin bind together at the binding site, the myosin pulls the actin and Z line towards the M line. The M line is in the middle of the two actins on either side. The myosin is pulling the actin along with the Z line towards the middle, which shortens the sarcomere, which is the contraction of the muscle. Rigor mortis is very well known postpartum in animals and in humans. In simple terms, rigor mortis is the stiffening of muscles caused by the chemical changes in the body. This is directly related to how muscles contract. Immediately after death of a person or animal, the cells in the body aren't dead. But when they do die on a cellular level, a large amount of calcium is released from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, causing the actin and myosin to bind, which therefore brings the muscle contraction. This is when rigor mortis occurs. In order for the actin and myosin to break their bond, they need ATP. But ATP cannot be sent once the cell dies, so they cannot separate. This is why muscles contract and stay contracted after death.
Well, there you have it, guys. Now we'll just wait and see what the authorities find out about this mysterious case. This is Emily and Kiteleen signing off. See you next time.